All right, good stuff. House rules, it's absolutely okay to eat candy canes while I'm speaking. If you have coffee, you want to bring coffee on another Sunday, feel free to do that. If you have snacks, feel free to do that as well. You know, I'm not bothered by, have you ever been in a situation where someone tries to get out a candy and they try to unwrap it really slowly and quietly? That makes way more noise, so just rip into these bad boys and have at her, okay? A little Christmas gift. But this morning I want to look at the question of how do we deal with our doubts? How do we deal with moments and places of uncertainty? Because we see in this story alone, in the reality of Zechariah, that he had doubts, that he had questions, even though we're told that he was a righteous man, that he was someone who faithfully wanted to serve and to follow in the ways of God. And although our circumstances may change, I don't know about you, but I can appreciate where Zechariah is coming from. Because what do we see? The basis of his doubts really falls into two camps, into two categories. The first one is he has doubts because of the circumstances. Right? The angel comes and tells him this good news, and what does he immediately do? He responds, and I don't know if you skip through this too quickly, but there's times when there's verses in the Bible that are just priceless because of what is said. And I love how Zechariah responds to the angel, right? Because when an angel shows up and says something, you can't lie back to the angel. You can't lie to them. And so what does Zechariah say? He's like, this is impossible. There's no way my wife is going to give birth and be pregnant because I am old. And then I think there's a pause in that statement because now he's thinking, my wife is also old. I can't say my wife is old. She's well along in years. Yes. Right? But he understands that they're both old, and so the circumstances was the reality of this is not going to happen. Have you ever found yourself there? You found yourself in a situation or a circumstance that even though you know the promise of God, even though you know what God has said, you're like, but what about the circumstances? What about the situation? A second reason I think Zechariah had a little bit of doubt is we were told that he had been praying for this because the angel says, your prayer has been answered. And so I'm going to make the assumption that they had been praying for a very long time and nothing had happened as of yet. Have you ever been there? Have you ever doubted the promises of God? Have you ever prayed for something over and over and over again and all you got is crickets? Like nothing? And you start to wonder, is this really going to happen? Is this really going to take place? There's so many other places we could go in the Bible, and we don't have time this morning, but I think one of the amazing things is often we see individuals who in the midst of doubt, if they're able to push through the doubt, they saw some incredible things happen in their lives. Not only in their lives, but also God working through them. But there's one example I just want to quickly share because I think it is one of the best examples of doubt. It comes at the very end of the book of Matthew when Jesus' 11 disciples are kind of getting their next step, right? Jesus has died, Jesus has risen, and now Jesus is about to ascend into heaven. And so he gathers his 11, those individuals who have been with Jesus more than anybody else. They have heard the majority of his teachings. They have seen firsthand the reality of his miracles. They have watched him die. They have watched him rise again. And now Jesus is gathering them together. And in Matthew 28, there's this amazing little bit tagged on to it. In verse 16, it says, now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. When they saw him, they worshiped him. You're like, that's kind of a no-brainer. I kind of get that. This is Jesus. This is the guy we've been following. We've seen him die. We've seen him rise. We've seen him teach and do incredible things. So some worshiped him, but some doubted. Some doubted. And it's almost like you want to shake your head and think, if anyone should not have any doubts, it's these 11 guys. I mean, they knew Jesus. They were with Jesus. Yet some of them doubted. And so that can bring a little bit of peace into my life when suddenly I realize that when I find myself in circumstances and in situations where I have questions, where I have doubts, where I wonder if God is going to show up as he said he is, it puts me in pretty good company. 11 disciples to start with. And so the question I want to look at here this morning, because perhaps at times as a church we don't handle this question well, is not whether or not you have doubts, but rather how do we overcome them? How do we dance with our doubts and continue to remain faithful? I thought of that imagery here this week, not because I'm a good dancer, actually because the exact opposite. But how oftentimes there is a dance with doubt. And if you think about doubt, the number one thing that doubt wants to do is get you off the dance floor. The number one thing that doubt wants you to do is to stop your pursuit of Jesus, is to stop you wanting to serve Jesus, is to stop you believing in Jesus. And so if you've ever had a lousy dance partner, they want to get you off the dance floor. You know, they'll step on your feet, they'll dance to the wrong time, they'll be doing the wrong thing, and you just get to a place of saying, this is not worth it. I'm going to get off this dance floor. Don't believe me? Ask my wife. She's had to put up dancing with me all these years. Right? And I know the moves. I know the game. I'd rather be sitting on the sideline than out on the dance floor. And so the question isn't, do you have doubts? Do you have questions? But don't let doubt lead. Don't let it lead. Be aware of it, but don't let it lead. And so how do we respond? You know, how do we remain faithful in the midst of our doubts, in the midst of our uncertainties? I want to teach you 3 dance moves here this morning. 3 dance moves. First dance move is this. Is be honest and specific about your doubts. I think we cause ourselves incredible challenges when we are either not honest enough about it, where we pretend as if we have it all together, and not simply admit that, you know what, I have some doubts, I have some questions, I have some uncertainties. I think that's why it's so important that as we grow in our faith or as we explore faith, we don't do it as individuals. But that's why God has called us as a community on Sunday mornings, in small groups, because it's amazing when you can begin to ask your questions, to begin to wonder out loud. You realize other people are there with you. Other people may be able to encourage you. And so one of the greatest dangers we can do is either not admit we have any doubts or try to deal with them on our own. Did you notice what Zechariah did? He was specific. He's like, I don't think this is going to happen because I am old and my wife is old. He was specific about his doubt. And so whatever your doubt may be, whether it's something in the Bible or whether it's the promise that God is going to use you or you're something that you're praying, be specific about your doubts. That's what I love about kids. They're honest about their questions. They read something in the Bible and they're like, how is this possible, Dad? Or what is this all about? And the helpful response is, no, you shouldn't doubt that. You shouldn't have any questions about that. You know, just believe. No. Ask the questions, explore. Begin to see what God is doing. And so the first dance move, I think, is be honest and specific about your doubts. The second one is be patient. To learn to dance, to learn something new, it takes incredible patience. Notice Zechariah. What I love about Zechariah is he had doubts, and obviously it went over a period of time, and he had to remain patient. You know, this would have gone year after year after year after year. And so one of the things I think we need to understand is the incredible reality of needing to be patient in the midst of our doubts. Because if you're like me, at times I may think, God, why are you not answering this prayer? And when I take a step back, the honest answer is, God, why are you not answering this prayer according to my timeline? Right? And then you take a step back and say, okay, maybe God's up to something else. Or maybe God isn't answering this prayer because there's something else coming around the corner. And so am I willing to step back and to be patient? Not to say I don't have doubts, but to say even in my questions and my uncertainties, I'm going to be patient. And then the third move, I think the most important move, is always focus on the relationship and not the circumstance. What doubt loves to do is to take the circumstance and position it above the relationship. And so suddenly the circumstance erodes the relationship with God. Let's take God out of the equation for a moment. Think of any significant relationship that you have with another person. Imagine for a moment that this person is supposed to pick you up at a specific time, right? Whether you're a kid and your parents are supposed to pick you up from school or from hockey or from dance or from music. And your parents, for the most part, have been pretty reliable, right? They're normally there right when they say they are. Well, you finish your game or your recital or your class or whatever it is, and you're waiting outside. You're waiting outside, and you're thinking, where are my parents? It's been like 5 minutes. It's been like 10 minutes. It's been like 15 minutes. It's been like half an hour. Suddenly questions start to run in. You know, they obviously don't care about me because I'm sitting here in the cold. You know, what's going on? Why is this happening? You know, maybe they have more important things to do. But the reality is likely something has come up. And so what do? When there's someone significant in your life and they haven't completely followed through in the way you expected them to do, you give them the benefit of the doubt. You say, my relationship is more important than the circumstance. And so I'm not going to believe all these other things. I'm going to trust in them. And I think that is so true in our lives, in our relationship with God, is will we give God the benefit of the doubt? To understand that perhaps he sees things in a way that we don't. And so instead of allowing our circumstance to erode our relationship, we will allow our relationship with God to overcome the doubts we may. And so we'll continue to wrestle with them. We'll continue to explore them. We'll continue to ask questions about them, but we will not give up on our relationship with God. Did Zechariah have doubts? Absolutely. But he continued in his walk with God because he was honest about them. He was patient in them, and he didn't allow his relationship to be eroded by them. I believe the same is true for all of us. I'm sure you have doubts. I know I do. Wondering, will God really use me the way he says he will? Is God really going to come through in the way he said he will? What does all this truly mean? But in the midst of my doubts, I want to continue to trust and believe in him, because we dance with doubt, but doubt is lousy when we let it lead. And so one final thought comes from the book of Philippians. It's written by the Apostle Paul near the end of his life. And it's a prayer that he offers. And it may be something that you want to dance with in this coming week. He says, do not worry about anything, but in everything by prayer and with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And so if you have doubts, just tell God about them. And this is what God says he'll do. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And so when we have our doubts, be honest Be open. Be patient. And always allow our relationship to take precedent over the circumstance. And in the same way that God did incredible things in the lives of others, he will do incredible things in our lives as well. When we dance with doubt, when we push through and continue to trust in God. Please stand with me as we sing together.